Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Vietnam Crypto Insights. We're here in the beautiful Tao Dien. It's rainy season. We almost didn't get the filming started because of the
man. I tell you.
But the weather's let up. You know, it rains for like 10 minutes and then it's done.
yeah. Unlike Japan, where it's at last week, where it rains all day, man. But luckily, it got a couple of days where it didn't rain, so I was good. Rain's light, but no, over here it dumps buckets. Of course, like last week I got stuck, so me and Sahil couldn't do our episode last week. Had to do the one online with Mari.
Yeah.
But stuck downtown Saigon.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on with the markets, man. This week it's incredible. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, what's your thoughts on what's going on with the crypto market?
It's an interesting one because actually, I've been talking to a lot of my crypto friends recently that like trade and buy a lot of shit coins and stuff, and they're kind of just like, there's nothing really to do. Like they short-term trade, but it's actually like during these last couple of months, after Bitcoin hit 70K, it's kind of just been going sideways. It's just been in this channel that it's been between like 60 and 70K. It's just been kind of sitting there. And then you've had like some altcoins that are also kind of following, like Ethereum's kind of sitting within a channel, and then you have some that are like still sitting within the channel. You got BNB like hitting new all-time highs, but then you also have like this like divergence of the market where these other altcoins are just like falling off a cliff, and the charts just don't look good. And the thing is that there's not really much market structure from where we are because the move was so sudden getting up here. So a correction down is going to be a big correction. So I think we're in this period of time where we're going to start seeing Bitcoin dominance continue to increase. I think we might see it top out at like 60%. It's at 52 now. Might top out at 60% before we start seeing like a proper alt season that everyone's been talking about.
Yeah.
But it's kind of weird because it's like, we were just talking before, like there's all this macro stuff that's going on. The markets are crazy, but then in terms of like price movement, like nothing's really happening.
Yeah, I mean, for somebody that's new, it probably looks depressing, especially if you got in and because of some hype about, the Bitcoin hitting all-time high. A lot of people probably jumped in on the bandwagon.
Ethereum ETFs coming out.
Yeah,
we're going to be hitting new all-time highs on Ethereum soon.
And then they probably went down a few thousand, and, now you have, I think the other day there was, there's been like inflows of the Bitcoin ETFs. There's been inflows days where there's like almost 1 billion a day. But there was like one that was an outflow day, like 900 million the other day. And, I think there's a lot of whale games going on. But right now there was also some reports. Of course, you can look this stuff on Glassnode. A lot of the miners are selling. And, because they got to keep running their operation. They still got to keep their lights on. They got to pay the electric bill. Those that don't get the, free electricity, like, thermal electricity from the mining operations like in El Salvador and stuff like that. But, and of course they have to upgrade their mining equipment.
Yes.
Because you can't.
Are there new miners coming out? Do you know if there's new mining equipment?
There's always a new miner. Man, I told you, I think I researched that game about 3 years ago, and there was just too many moving parts, man. You have to have a team to actually do that nowadays, because it's not like you can just plug in a regular standard computer and get some, mine Bitcoin to get win a transaction, and it's not going to, chances are if you get one machine and you're not in a mining pool, you're probably going to be wasting that 10 or 20,000 that you paid for that machine. And you can't even get one single machine unless you buy a used.
Mm-hmm.
And, the trouble with buying a used machine is that it's not going to be able to it's not going to have the hash rate. It's not going to be able to do the calculation to win the Bitcoin.
And also the efficiency, the energy efficiency, because that's a big part of the equation, right?
Yeah, it's not a good thing.
They
make you buy at least 5 nowadays. And so
they package it up.
If you don't have $100 grand or
you got to have a lot of upfront capital.
You got to have upfront capital, and the price goes up according to Bitcoin. So, right now, I was actually, the last time I looked at the Bitcoin price is probably like 40,000-50,000. I think for 5 machines, probably right now, I haven't looked for a while, it's probably about 150 grand now, because it goes up and down based on Bitcoin.
I mean, if you have the upfront capital, I think it's worthwhile getting into it, and you're happy to take that risk, because other than like the usual mining activity that you usually get. Like there is just like a lot more network activity that's happening, and we saw the initial part of that when ruins kicked off, and there was like all that ordinal trading activity that just like skyrocketed the price of 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 mining, and also as well like the network reward. So you know, transaction prices went up. That's what I was trying to say.
Oh,
yeah, the transaction prices went up insane during that time, and you know, even now I think, you know, when there is going to be more speculation, I think there's not as much speculation in the market right now, but like once we start getting back into that again, and there's going to be a lot more interest in runes, because I think it's going to come back. There's going to be more interest in ordinals.
Oh yeah.
As Bitcoin hits like 80k, 90k, 100k, like we're going to see that again. And you know, when that happens, dude, if you're running a miner, you're going to be making bank, because
the interest in ordinals, one of the surveys I seen a few weeks ago is really high. So that's actually definitely a area to be looked at as far as Bitcoin. But yeah, what do you think about all the stuff that's going on with the geopolitical landscape, man? You know, as we were just talking before, you know, got on air. I mean, there's just so much going on geopolitically that is going to affect, you know, not only the whole cryptocurrency market, but you know, it's going to affect the whole global system of things. And you know, I think this is a very interesting and kind of scary time, man, because we've got countries that are joining, like the BRICS, or requesting to join the BRICS. You've got countries that are getting rid of the dollar, including Vietnam, which they just announced it after Putin came here. There was a bunch of agreements signed between Russia and Vietnam.
Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was, I haven't seen all the different agreements, you know, and I kind of took, with that vacation, I kind of like, in Tokyo, I kind of stepped away from everything. I kind of took a gander and seen what was going on. I try to keep up daily, but yeah, they're actually, you know, choosing to trade in the local currency, which that could, you know, it's not good for. It doesn't bode well for the dollar, of course, because you know, as I understand more about the whole currency scheme of things, you know, being in crypto for almost 5 years, you know, when you have a currency that a lot of people are using, it tends to have more value. And you know, when you have multiple countries choosing to not trade in your currency, then that creates a vacuum. I mean, it creates instability. It creates a lack of power. I mean, you don't have control. And I think what's probably hurt the United States stance with the dollar is that they've been trying to use the dollar as a weapon, and a lot of countries seen that and said, you know, we don't want to be on the losing side of things, so let's not even, you know, let's not risk our future on, you know, making the wrong move, you know, and getting, you know, punished, you know, by the U.S. system because we didn't follow what they wanted us to do. You know, this, you know, I understand that, because you know, you don't know what's going to happen, and that's part of the problem with the U.S. structure, is that, you know, you have people that come in every 4 years in the presidency, and they might change directions completely. And you know, here you got a country that's, you know, they stable political system. They got a one-party system, and you know, all the people's been in power, and they have a way of things. They don't want to have to keep shifting policies every 4 years. Yeah, because you know, they don't think every 4 years here.
Yeah, they think along the time.
They think in 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, 100 years. They're not thinking, you know, okay, let's shift here, shift there. And you know, you can't really do that as a country if you're thinking long term, because you know, it's destabilizing to your way of things. So you know, hats off to Vietnam. I really think that they're getting pretty sophisticated in handling their global affairs. I mean, you know, we talked to, you know, of course, China's leader, and Biden, the U.S. leader, came here this fall. Now a Russian leader. So you know, they understood. The major powers understand that Vietnam is playing a major role in the future. I mean, it's and the port system is elaborate. The infrastructure has been built up tremendously in the highway systems, and you know, this is the hub for rice. There's a lot of agriculture. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to my wife earlier. So man, you know, thing I missed about Vietnam, one of the biggest things I missed is there was fruit on every corner. You know,
Oh yeah,
they don't
yeah.
have that in Japan, man. You know,
Dude,
you might
always fresh as well.
You might, yeah, fish. You can go fish, sushi. Yeah, you can fresh all
Fresh,
day.
yeah.
Japan. But yeah, man, dude, you might go to the 7-Eleven or the local store and pay $10 for some fruit, man. It's ridiculous. But,
Pretty
you
much
know,
always, if you get like any kind of fruit juice or something at any cafe or restaurant, it's always going to be fresh.
it's fresh here, man.
It's
Fresh.
very rarely it's like concentrate.
Yeah, you're not gonna get no frozen, nothing.
Yeah.
You can go to a corner, get a fresh juice, fresh smoothie. It's blended right there. It's it's I can't, you know, I can't get over that. I was like, man, I gotta get home. I gotta get home to Vietnam, even though I'm from the U.S. originally.
You know, the interesting thing, you know, you were saying about like this little political instability and these things that are kind of happening now is like, I think I saw recently as well. So I think countries, like a lot of countries actually store their gold in the U.S. with the U.S. government. So I think South Africa, like a lot of the gold that they own, they've given it to the U.S. to hold for them. And now a lot of these countries are asking for that gold back.
Yeah.
They don't want it. They don't want it to be stored in the U.S. anymore.
Because, you know, why we deal with some
But
bipolar leadership in America.
I think the writings of the wall that there is.
You know, why deal with that?
You know, I think like you said before, like the thing that one of the things that a lot of Western countries had going for them was that they were generally quite politically stable.
Yeah.
But in the recent past, particularly in the last like 8-10 years, like you no longer have that political stability there, because when you're changing a leader all the time, you can't possibly have any kind of political stability, and then it also impacts the way that the people that live within those countries also operate, and that's why you see a lot of stuff where, you know, between like, you know, the red versus blue in America is like become very polarized.
Oh yeah, it's very polarized. It's very bombastic. It's, you know, I actually don't miss the political rancor that, you know, used to go on in America. It's just really, it's kind of, I tell you, to me, it's a bunch of noise. I mean, people follow that and they cheerlead with it. To me, it's just a waste of energy.
I mean, it's both. Also, you know, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, or whether you're like left versus right, you're basically, they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
The way that
two wings of the same bird.
Yeah, and like especially like when you look at like you know, you look at a lot of the stuff, like people like whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and stuff had come out and talked about, like a lot of the actual big changes that happen and that are governed within these countries that actually come from the deep state, not actually from the political party that's currently in power.
Yeah, and the dark money sources too.
Yeah, exactly.
There's you know, there's been a lot of things going on, especially with this situation in Israel that is actually came to light. Is that, you know, they're one of the big groups, AIPAC is one of the big lobbyists, man. They've been able to get stuff pushed through left and right, and it didn't matter which party was
in power.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just seemed like they both just caved in, and they've been able to outmaneuver everybody, and you know, it's just kind of distressing. I mean, to me, it's like, okay, we live in a democracy, but, you know, how is it that this, you know, entity is allowed to just move around what the people want, and, you know, get the legislators to do what they want, you know.
Yeah.
They've been even doing stuff like, there was one incident that came to light last month where they had donated money to another lobbying group, and the lobbying group was science. It was a science group, but they basically paid off this other lobbying group to push to give money to their candidate to do their bidding. And I don't know, it's just, there's some strange stuff going on in America right now. I'm glad to be from underneath that spectrum. But, you know, I think what's going to happen here, there's a lot of these countries, like, you know, even Vietnam's de-dollarization, they're going to be doing their local currency, trading in their local currency. Saudi Arabia is going to be doing, even though they had agreement for 50 years, an informal agreement to do the trading of their fuel in dollars. Now they're shifting away from that, and, you know, it's just, I don't know what's going to happen with the dollar. I think they're trying to press for this whole digital ID thing, and then put everybody on either a stable coin or a CBDC. But you know, they tried to force that in Nigeria just recently with the ENAIRA. But that didn't go over well. So,
what happened?
They almost had a revolution over there, man. You know, they've been having a lot of political instability in places like that. You know, they tried to automatically get rid of old money, and people that had all their money stored up in their closets or mattresses or whatnot, they came out in the streets. So that didn't succeed. You know, if the money was like over a certain amount, I think it was like 20, 30 years old. If the money was that old, then it was just automatically going to be worthless.
Oh shit.
That happened a year ago. I think it was like a year and a half ago. That almost caused riots in the streets. The whole forcing with the ENAIRA, that almost caused riots in the street. But you know, people are getting tired of, you know, the powers that be pushing these policies that's not benefiting them. I mean, it's you know, I know that the governments want to and they need to feel secure to have control, but at the same time, man, there's got to be a balance, man. You can't force people's hand. People want to have control over their future. They want to have control over their finances. They don't want their money devalued. They don't want to be in a situation like Argentina where they forced to go to the bank to get $40 a day.
Yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
line up for an hour. I mean, it's just, but it's getting that
Well,
way
Bitcoin
in the
ownership-
U.S. and parts of the EU.
Yeah.
Because you can't get, you know, they limit you to under 3,000 a month.
Yeah, Australia's the same.
Yeah,
now.
it's you know.
So technically it's like 10,000 Australian dollars, about six and a half thousand USD. But like,
That's ridiculous, man.
you know, there's lots of videos where people have been going to the bank and like they're like, hey, I want to get like $2,000 out or like $3,000 out, like Australian dollars. So it's like, you know, 2K USD out. And the bank's like, oh well, what do you need the money for?
Yeah, there's ridiculous, dude, and they got all this crap. You know, it's all to protect the banks, man. It's not. They say, oh well, we're trying to protect people from terrorism, and that's all to protect the banks, man. That's a smokescreen. They're just trying to protect their monetary system. And as you probably have already seen, I mean, we talked about this earlier, man. The unrealized losses in the U.S. banks is at an all-time high here recently because of the.
There's a lot of talks of like the regional banks collapsing,
Man,
and there's going to be a consolidation in the banking market in the U.S.
There's hundreds of banks that are on the verge of collapse. I mean, if they were to cash, you know, everybody was to cash out right now, dude, there'd be hundreds of banks in the U.S. that would be.
You know how
lost.
last year when Silicon Valley Bank and a couple other banks fell up, Signature Bank, and yeah, there was like one other one that had this issue. Because of the unrealized losses, then the U.S. government came out with the BTFD program, but that was only meant to last like 12 months, and that 12 months came up like a couple of months ago. So did they renew it? Did they extend it? I don't remember.
I don't know. I mean, they're doing some tricky accounting, tricky numbers games, man. It's all a sham. I mean, we living in the time where you can't trust anything at face value anymore.
I can't remember when we talked. Yeah, I can't remember when we talked about this with our on our channel, but I did have this chat with some of my other crypto friends about like all of these countries that are coming out with their CBDCs. Like the only reason that they're coming out with this is that it creates further obfuscation about what's actually happening with the debt. So like, you know, if the US government comes out with this, then what they're doing is they're just obfuscating the actual, because they, you know, like the US government has so much debt, it can never pay it off. The GDP of the US is not high enough to pay off the debt that they're accruing. But if they create all of this opaqueness of where the money is and what the debt is and what it looks like, and they can do that by adding another layer of another digital currency on top of it.
It's another layer of abstraction.
Yeah, then it becomes even more obscure. It's like, you know, then it becomes even harder to be like, well, like what debt do you have? Because you just don't know. You can't. There's no way, because now you have this other digital currency that's linked to
How many
USD.
people have your currency?
Yeah,
well, we don't know. You know, it's wild, man.
That I think that's the, other than obvious control, but I think this is the other thing that they're kind of pushing towards with CBDCs.
Well, the BIS, I think, has a targeted goal of 2030 before everybody has to have a digital ID, and that's, you know, a lot of the big global banks. They want all of them to have digital ID system and so they can track us. And you know, I don't know if it's going to be able to be met. That's like less than 6 years away, and you know, hell, we're still. I mean, there's a lot of adoption with crypto, but you know, in places still like the U.S., I mean, people are not familiar with that, and you know, they got an aging population. You know, I was in Japan. Japan has an aging population. People are not going to be wanting to switch to some sort of digital form of. I mean, even though they got smart wallets coming out and stuff like that, I mean, who's 80-year-old grandparents going to want to use a smart wallet? I don't care how smart
most
the wallet is.
Most of them are still using rotary phones,
yeah,
man.
most of them might have. Yeah, they might have a flip phone. You don't know. There's people here I've seen with flip phones in Vietnam, even though you know you can't. You know they outlaw a lot of the importation of old devices. I mean, it can't be over 10 years. I think it's like 15 years old. You can't have no old device.
Oh, really? I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
A lot of the devices, matter of fact, you can't import a lot of stuff unless it's new. You know, I've tried to send electronics here, man. They don't want you to send no old electronics here. I mean, I think it's part of it is you know, it's a cybersecurity risk, but you know, I think you know, they just want everything here new, and they do. I mean, a lot of people here. I mean, I see a lot of people here. I know they probably only make a $500,000 a month, but you'll see them with $1,000 phone.
Yeah.
It's strange, but it's true.
Yeah, no, the tech adoption here is crazy in that regard. You know,
I miss the connectivity of Vietnam. You know, I was in a very sophisticated, highly functioning country in a city, Tokyo, but there were a lot of restaurants that did not have free Wi-Fi. Here, most of the restaurants you go to that's, you know, mid to high level, they got Wi-Fi.
Dude, even little cafes and stuff, man.
even the Podunk Cafe where you paying a quarter for your coffee, they got free Wi-Fi. So yeah, it was kind of like, okay, this Tokyo is not as advanced as Vietnam on some aspects.
The local coffee shop I go to around the corner from my house is just I think I'm like 25% of a clientele. Like she knows me. So as soon as before I even walk in, she knows exactly what my order is, and she's already starting to make it as soon as she sees me. Like that. Like that's it. And it's like $30K, man. $30K for this coffee. It's great.
That's love. Yeah.
But even they have Wi-Fi there. Like there's not many people that go to this cafe, but yeah, it's.
It's love, but yeah, but not only that, but the crypto here is just so embedded. You know? And, you know, the CBDC 6-year goal, you know, of the BIS, I think that's a sham, dude. It's not going to work. It's not workable. I think what they're going to have trouble with, they'll probably switch a quarter of the population of the world, maybe.
Cash is too heavily used.
Cash is too heavy. I mean, I think that this whole paradigm shift from fiat currency to digital currency, it's going to take some time. I mean, for the vast majority of countries, and because a lot of people don't have, you know, the wherewithal to, you know, transact. You know, you know, their smartphones are pretty ubiquitous in the world, but you know, at the same time, it's, you know, the level of education that's required to understand and to transact. I mean, you got to have the retailer and the consumer being able to meet eye to eye and say, okay, we're going to use this, we're going to use that, you know. And I don't know. I just don't think it's there, man. I've been to like several countries. You've been around. You've been traveled all over. You know, hell, even I was in the Philippines in January. I mean, I just don't. There's certain parts over there. I don't imagine that they'll be able to okay, we're going to use a stable coin.
Yeah, no. You know, interesting. I got a question going back to like we're talking about you know the de-dollarization of these countries and you know China moving away, Vietnam moving away. Like, you know, we at the moment we denominate like, you know, our net worth and things like that in USD, and when we look in crypto, like everything is always, you know, we base it back into USD, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, we talked about like exit strategy in the cycle and like, you know, converting stuff into USD afterwards. But then like, how do you like, so like if you think like two facets to this question. So like, first of all is like all of these countries have US dollars, they have euros, they have, you know, they have large amounts of these different currencies, and if they flooded the market with all of those currencies, they would crash that currency. Like
Yeah.
a lot of these countries, you'd be surprised how many of them have the power to crash each other's currencies. But then
Yeah.
they obviously just don't do it because a lot of their treasury, a lot of the money that they hold is in that currency.
Right.
So it's like they can't
Right.
really do that
They
because
can't.
then it fucks up
Yeah,
their.
it will.
Yeah.
It'd be a self-defeating thing.
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Like even China. I mean, even though they've dumped a lot of U.S. treasuries, they still held dollars though.
Yeah. So it's like, well, then how do
And
you?
They got trillion. I think they
Yeah.
almost got $1 trillion or close to $1 trillion in dollars.
So like, yeah, what do you like? So it's an interesting thing when you think about like this de-dollarization because it's not something like a lot of people think like, oh, this can happen like tomorrow, it can happen
No.
today. It's not going to happen like that because if it does happen, no matter how it happens, even for the BRICS nations, it will have an impact on their economic output and their value that they have because they also still hold, because they have to use the US dollar, they still hold a lot of US dollars
Yeah.
as a result of just needing to have it to trade with
Yeah.
other countries.
Yeah, there's
And
still stuff they have to trade in dollars.
so I think it's something that's like, unless there's like, you know, the US go to war and they lose a major war against like a big power like Russia or China, which is obviously not going to happen anytime soon, but if that was to happen, then yes, then you could see the US dollar kind of just
Yeah, I
go
think it's
into
going to be
zero.
a slow bleed, man.
Yeah.
Because it's it might be 5 or 10 years down the line, but
So when
I think they're with the banks on the verge of collapsing. I mean, that might cause enough panic in the markets that will, but the big powers that be will come to aid, to rush to save it. Of course, some kind of way. They always prop up.
but they
That's what happened in the 2008 situation. The government bailed out the banks and all that. Instead of places like Iceland where they sent all those bankers to jail. You remember that? I don't know if you remember that. They send them people to jail, man, for playing around.
So tell me then, what do you think like when you're thinking, I mean not financial advice, but like when you're thinking about like, okay, when it's time to sell, like are you going to convert it into USD? Like what are you thinking? Like how are you going to
I don't want to pay no taxes. I'm good. I mean, I'll pay what I owe, but I'm not trying to, do what they call a
But like you're gonna keep it in.
taxable event. That's what they call it.
But
When you switch it to USD, it's a taxable. Actually, if you switch it to any other denominated cryptocurrency, it's supposed to be a taxable event.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's a tricky situation, man. I had the option of doing the whole thing with the putting the crypto inside a Roth or whatever. I really don't want to be in the financial system of the U.S. anymore. It's just really, to me, it's just a waste of my energy and time. It just the U.S. is it's been okay for me at some points, but the past several years, it's just not been a very welcoming place for me as a entrepreneur, especially as a black entrepreneur, and it's amazing how much attention that I get after I leave the country. They're sending me questionnaires, and I'm getting the Coinbase questionnaires. I think I sent you that.
Yeah.
It's like, I think Coinbase and Circle are vying to be the stable coins or the central providers in alignment with the government of the U.S.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what they're doing is they're trying to prepare to say, okay, see, we've been tracking all the people, so let us, bless us with your, business from the government. I think that's because it's going to take. I mean, even though they've been working on, I think it's going to take a lot more for the U.S. and a lot of the governments to actually create their own stablecoins rather than use the existing stablecoins. Because the only difference between the stablecoin and the CBDC is, one is, pretty much controlled by the government or the central bank, I should say, and one isn't. But I think, they're virtually indistinguishable.
So, in terms of like portfolio management, like when it's time to sell, like how are you thinking about like holding stable coins or like buying other assets? Like what are you thinking about that?
I probably just do both.
Yeah.
I was
Or
looking
just
at
gonna
something.
you're just gonna hodl for like another 10 years.
I really don't think I'll hold, during the bear cycle. I mean, that's not a fun experience when you're down like 60, 70, 80%. That's not fun.
No.
That's not fun, man. I mean, there's other things, kind of the thing that you have to do as an investor. I mean, you have to prepare. You know, okay, what do I do outside of the crypto space when it's a bear cycle? What, you know, am I, you know, I'm not in a position like Michael Saylor, of course, where I have billions on standby. You know, of course, he's in a different position, so he can just, you know, spending his, you know, whatever he spends on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. I mean, it's not going to hurt him. But, you know, if I'm spending $15,000 a year for my daughter's school, of course, I got to, you know, maneuver my situation a little bit better.
Yeah.
And, okay, you know, maybe I'll put some stuff in a stable coin. Maybe I'll put something in a high-interest bank account over here. Because, you know, there was a guy at the gym that I met a year ago. He said he got his money. I don't know how much money he had. Obviously, this guy's, I think his wife worked for the World Bank, he said, but he said they got a lot of their money. They locked it at 9.2%. Hell, if you got 6 or 7 figures at 9.2%,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was in a Vietnamese bank, and I said, man, does that safe? He said, man, he said, my wife works for the World Bank. It's safe, you know. And even the situation that occurred here several months ago with that lady that was head of the bank that actually, you know,
the one that got caught with
crashed.
the fraud.
Yeah, she negatively impacted 2,500 people. I think the government's going to actually
Make them whole.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
yeah,
good.
it's so, you know, as you know, crazy as it sounds. I mean, you know, banking system and the level of return that you can get here on something as simple as a banking event, you know, hold your money in the bank. I mean, it's just unreal here, and you know, because in the U.S. that's unheard of to get 9.2% from a bank.
No.
I mean, you're lucky to get a 0.5% if you put it in a checking or a saving account.
Dude, I remember, like, I had a savings account when this would have been, even when interest rates were higher, like back, I mean, like 2010, 2011, and yeah, the most you would ever get is like 4.5%, 5%.
Yeah, they're so stingy, man, and the things that they do with the money is just so unheard of. I mean, it's the fractional reserve system of things with the banking is just so, it's almost criminal. You know, how are you gonna, you know, take people's money and you're holding 20% of reserve for the assets that you supposedly are managing, but then you go gamble and bet all of the money, but you know, at the same time you're paying somebody 0.25% for holding their money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
this is why crypto money markets are the go, man.
Yeah,
because you have no middlemen in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes it much better.
Yeah, but matter of fact, that's actually what Richard Heart was famous for, right?
I don't.
With the Pulse, with the money market thing that he did with Hex.
I mean, dude, I never understood Hex, but it just always came across as scammy to me.
Well, you know,
I don't fully understood.
I've got people here that I know that actually, you know, live, breathe by Hex. One of the guys, Russ, I did a short interview with him a couple months back. He's a young guy, but he builds on Pulse. He's a very strong.
What's the activity
believer.
on Pulse? I feel like there was nothing really going on there.
You know, I think Richard Heart, he's kind of a hated and loved guy in the whole crypto sphere, but I think the thing with Hex was that it generated a certain amount of percentage for the people that were investing, and hell, I met a couple people here that made a lot of money off Hex. One of the guys actually he traveled. He was here like about a year ago. Angel, I think he's in South America now. He made a lot of money on Hex. So there's people that's made a lot of money on Hex. But, you know, I think Richard Heart gets a bad rap because he was very flamboyant. You know, you'd see him with a bunch of Gucci and Louis bags and, you know, traveling the world. And, he was very arrogant.
But his attitude is just so bad. And then also as well, just like, all the time, like any Twitter posts or anything, it was always like Hex people like shilling it, and the way that they were shilling it is just like, it just seemed so scammy.
Yeah, it did. Matter of fact, the first time I looked at Hex, it looked like the site, it looked scammy. I was like, how does this work?
I looked at it, even looking at the chart, like I still don't fully understand like whether it is just a Ponzi scheme, because of the way the chart, like when you look at the chart, it just looks like It looks like a Ponzi scheme
it,
token.
Yeah, it does. And,
It looks
I
like
think
some big MLM
I think he's still
system.
he's still in the middle of a big lawsuit too, with the SEC. I think he got a good legal team.
Oh, speaking of that, the SEC dropped the suit against.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude, I can't believe we didn't talk about that against Ethereum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. That.
Well, they got so much political blowback, I think, and the main guy that was the anti-crypto guy is actually gone, I think, from the SEC. So, yeah, kudos.
You mean
to
about
that,
J
man.
Powell? No.
Oh,
He's
no.
like still IC.
There was another guy. He was with the SEC for about 11 years.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name, but yeah, that's actually big news. That's actually gives me a breather.
Also, I think like a lot of their case got invalidated once the Ethereum ETF got approved.
Yeah,
and it pulled it out of their jurisdiction and put it back into the FTC.
That took the wind away from their sail, dude. That was just, yeah. It didn't help that they had that $1.8 million sanction in federal court for going after those other people too. You remember that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, we talked about that last month. They had the people at the SEC had lied and said that this crypto company was transferring money overseas when the money was still in the U.S. But they did that. They lied to say that to get federal court jurisdiction, and then the judge found that out and pretty much lambasted the lawyers that made up the lie.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we talked about that before.
Yeah, they sanctioned the SEC. I think it was like $1.8 million, and it was pretty.
I think it's
spectacular.
It's an interesting thing because there's still obviously speculation about, because the Democrats have obviously taken this very anti-crypto stance versus the Republicans, and then now you have like some of these other governing bodies that are starting to like let up on their crypto, stranglehold. Yeah. And I think there's still like a strong possibility, regardless of who wins the election, that we'll see a little bit more leniency and openness towards crypto in the U.S. coming up. And it'll be interesting to see next year what's going to happen. Up until this point, because up until the Bitcoin moving up to 70K, everyone was always like, oh, we're in this like left translated cycle. We're going to see Bitcoin top at the end of this year. We've got the U.S. election happening. Generally, like the markets will rally in the year of an election and then kind of like peak out. And we kind of have seen that happen in the past. But I think that over the last couple of months, what we've seen with the market going sideways is actually more strongly showing that I don't think we're going to see the market peak at the end of this year. I think it's more likely to have like a similar bull market that what we used to have, that what we were used to seeing. And I think, yes, generally what I've observed in the markets, and obviously the market dynamics are a little bit different now, is like in previous bull markets, when the price has prematurely moved up too high, you generally have a big correction. You have long stagnation of price before you start seeing it move up again. So the first example of this was that in July 2019, we saw Bitcoin go from the cycle bottom at like 3,000, 3,300 or something it was, 3,800, all the way up to 14K. And so that move happened within a couple of months. Yeah. And then so this was like much faster. We saw a correction that was like much higher towards the previous all-time high compared to the last couple of the previous Bitcoin cycles. And then also as well, in terms of the ascend in the move, but also as well the timing of it happened much earlier in the bear market. And then what we just saw was the price kind of flip-flopped around this like 8 to 12K region for a very long time, even post-halving. And then we only really got the proper bull market starting off in December. And then when Bitcoin hit 20K, it just went crazy. It went up to like 40K. And, there was not a lot of market structure within that move compared to previous cycles. We didn't have the standard like 40% corrections, 30-40% corrections on the way up. It was just like one sharp move up. And then we had a similar thing happen where we topped very early in the cycle, and then we just kind of we had a sharp move down, and we just kind of stayed sideways for a few months before going up again. And I think we're going to see something similar again. We're seeing that now. We're seeing that Bitcoin went up too quickly to 70K on the hype of the ETF, and there was a lot of that was actually, when you look at the analytics, a lot of it was actually driven through the derivative markets because funding rates were really high. There were a lot of open interest in derivatives trading exchanges, and so now we're starting to see this like consolidation and correction.
Yeah, I think we're going to get. I think they'll probably get a bump up here pretty soon with Bitcoin, but I'm more excited with what's going to go on with Ethereum because we're at a almost a 8-year low of the Ethereum that's on the exchanges. I think it's like hasn't been this low since like 2017, I believe.
Yeah, wow.
Less 10% of the Ethereum's on the exchanges, and this is right. We're on the cusp of the U.S. Going through the final stages of the approval of the spot ETF, and those funds are going to be buying up the.
Do you know when the plan launches for that?
A lot of analysts say by July 2nd. They're probably going to.
Oh shit! That's
launch.
like in like 10 days. Basically.
Yeah.
10, 12 days.
I mean, you've seen what happened when Bitcoin's ETFs got approved in January. It took 2 months for them to hit a new all-time high. So I'm expecting like a 5,000, 6,000 Ethereum price here in the next couple months. I think Ethereum might hit a new peak. I think Bitcoin might stagnate a little bit, but I think the Ethereum probably is going to outperform Bitcoin for the next couple months for sure.
I don't think we're going to see the next leg up. Like looking at past cycles as well, generally it's like 7 to 9 months after the halving that Bitcoin usually hits a new all-time high. I mean, we obviously had this pre-halving now, but I still think that we can see Bitcoin just go sideways for the next next few months until like September, October. And like in that time there's still room, like if this once the ETF gets starts trading, we can see like Ethereum go up, and then on top of that I think one of the differences is so with the Bitcoin ETF, like Bitcoin is in many ways it's kind of segregated from the rest of the market, and so with Bitcoin going up post ETF, yes, all that liquidity went into Bitcoin and didn't really circulate through. And in terms of like the TradFi money coming into crypto, it will be a similar sort of dynamics with Ethereum, as in that money that goes into Ethereum is going to stay, like, it's just going to stay in the TradFi space. It's not going to it's not going to rotate in altcoins. But the thing is that a lot of the altcoin market, like 60% of TVL is on Ethereum. And so there is going to be people that are making money, and that money there will rotate into other big cap and lower cap altcoins, and it's much easier from a decentralized, from a DeFi point of view, to go from Ethereum to other chains than it is to go from Bitcoin to Ethereum or Bitcoin to any other chain.
What I thought was interesting, a guy at GM Vietnam from Nansen said is that a lot of people are actually starting out on L2s on Ethereum now.
Yes.
This is kind of a different shift in paradigms. And they just came out with the new smart wallet too, the Coinbase, and this is going to make it a lot easier for people to just get it on my device and I'm using a smart wallet, and then I'm just going to go buy some arbitrium, which has actually been the leading L2.
Yeah.
And people are just going right to that and not having to worry about the 12 or 24 word passphrase and writing it down or putting it down somewhere safe, and some of the old school ways of actually generating your private keys. So I think that's just going to actually lead to a big shift in things, and I'm kind of interested in seeing. I mean, one of the guy from Nansen was saying is that Base, that might actually spur the growth of Base, which is Coinbase L2 on Ethereum too.
I think when we get,
it's going to be interesting to see.
I think when we get retail money coming into crypto, it's either going to be going through Base or it's going to be going through Solana, which is what we've seen already. I think that's going to be the big driver. So I look at my activity. I hardly ever use ETH mainnet. I mean, I do when I need to, but most of the time, if I can help it,
it's too damn costly.
I would,
They reduced the fees 3 times, and it still costs.
So usually, I use arbitrium, or I use other L2s. That's my go-to. Is like, even if I'm like sending money between friends, like that's what I would usually do. But let's talk about one last final thing.
Yeah,
which is we talking about the Ethereum ETF. We had a question from one of our viewers.
Yeah, one of the viewers asked, as with ETFs approved, it said, could you create a video explaining how the approval of ETFs by the SEC will impact the cryptocurrency market, particularly in Southeast Asia? I think we've actually explained a lot of that. I mean, I think the scarcity of Ethereum that is going to result from the ETFs being approved, because the funds have to buy, for a spot ETF, they have to buy the asset to match however much they have. And I think in the case of the U.S. ETFs, they have a 30-day window, so they can have a cash equivalent instead of actually having the actual ETH, which I think is kind of shady in my opinion.
Yeah.
But because a lot of the ones that in other countries, they have to have they don't have a 30-day window, or they can't have a cash equivalent. They have to have that asset on hand. But I think, with the scarcity already at 10% on the exchanges right now, the scarcity going tremendously low, it's not going to do nothing but drive the price high, and I think, like I said, we're going to be probably seeing a new all-time high within a couple months as soon as Ethereum spot ETFs are approved in the U.S. Because
as soon as the training goes live for it.
They have the lion's share of the institutions that are buying in the U.S. Actually, I was kind of blown away about how some of the institutions are actually thoroughly ingrained into the crypto market. One of the companies, institutions, is actually Franklin Templeton. I mean, they've got guys that are in every aspect of crypto now.
Wow.
In that from development, but they have their hands in every aspect. I was kind of shocked. They're not just buying the ETF. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But how it's going to impact the South Asian market is that, of course, so goes the U.S., so goes Asia. I mean, there's really, we live in a global market, and of course, crypto is global. So, there's a high adoption rate here, but what happens in the U.S. is, of course, is going to affect the crypto market here, because the price goes up there, it's going to go up here.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about this before, so I think to your point, it's exactly right. Like, the demand is there, and like any nation that will adopt an ETF or like adopt any kind of policy that makes it easier for people to buy crypto, and there's a lot of money there waiting to buy it, is going to create more demand for Ethereum or any other asset, and we're seeing this now with that. So so that's one side of it, which is exactly what you were talking about, and the other side of it as well is, like, we talked about this before. So Australia follows. I mean, Australia's it's in the ASEAN region, but the Australia follows what the US does.
Yeah.
So any crypto policy that gets adopted by the UK or gets adopted by the US, Australia basically follows suit. And so we talked about like how funny it is how quickly Australia approved the ETF once America did it. And I guarantee you, if the US government hadn't gone through and approved that, Australia would not have an Ethereum ETF right now, because they would just be waiting. And so they just basically, as soon as they did it, they followed. But the funny thing is that now, I think it's already live. It's already trading in the Australian stock market. The Ethereum ETF in Australia is
funny
trading.
how Australia started late, and then they actually beat the U.S. to the finish line.
Yeah.
As far as getting everything done. But one other aspect is of course, countries tend to follow each other. As long as there's a roadmap, as long as there's some sort of legal precedence or guidance. I mean, other countries tend to look at it. I mean, they're not going to always adopt everything. But when it comes to something like this, it's a new technology, and they've got to, like we got to look, what is this other country doing? How are they managing things? How are they, that actually helps for the adoption in other countries. So that's another aspect that might happen, is that South Asian countries will look at what's the U.S. doing? Okay. What's Australia doing? Okay, what's the London stock market? How are they doing with their physical ETFs? I think they're called the physical Ethereum is what they launched on the London Stock Exchange. So they look at that, and then they probably adopt different aspects of that legal framework or regulatory framework in the country such as Vietnam. I'm not going to say they're going to do everything that the other countries are doing, but that actually helps as a guide, as a legal precedence and guide to, help them further their policies, in these countries in Southeast Asia. So.
And even like what we touched on before is like the easing of regulation in like this creates a pathway for easing of regulation in the US for crypto adoption and crypto buying from retail, and so that just naturally would just create more demand for Ethereum and other altcoins coming from the US. And typically in the past, a lot of the crypto market has been driven by US inflows. Obviously Asia has a lot of control as well of the market. You can see a difference between trading time in the US versus Asia and Europe, and there is differences. Australia is like almost inconsequential in this.
Right.
I mean, I was
only
talking
25 million people in Australia.
Yeah. So 28. Yeah. So I was talking to my family about this, and they're like, oh well, like how is this going to impact the price of Ethereum? And I was like, dude, no one cares about Australia. Like the market is so small in Australia. Like even with the Ethereum ETF being approved there, like it's not enough to move the market.
It's not.
Whatever happens, if it's tax season, and you see like when it's tax season in the US, generally a lot of the market will correct a lot because people have to sell their crypto to pay their taxes. But in Australia, when it's Australian tax season, it doesn't impact the market because Australia makes such a small portion of that. There's so little money.
It's hard to believe as big as Australia is. There's 4 times as many people here in Vietnam. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's going to be a lot of this is good for crypto in the long term, I think. Seeing these products go into the TradFi system. So overall, I think it's going to be quite good. But yeah, if you guys have more questions, let us know. Any content that you want us to produce.
Feel free to reach out. And don't forget to go into the description and sign up for the KuCoin. Get your 15 USD for signing up for an account. I mean, that's actually a bonus. If you have sign up a new account, you get that. So check that out. Help support us.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring good content.
Like, subscribe, share it around.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you all for joining us then.
We'll
see you next time.
Keep it coffee and crypto.